Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Michael Lamon. Join me now as I go on the aisle with Michael for a conversation about his journey from music school to infantry squad leader, and then from underemployment to Broadway investor and Tony Award winner. It's so great to meet you, and for this is an audio podcast only,
Great.
so people can't see you. Are you calling from New York City? That's where you live, correct?
Yes. Yep. I'm calling in from New York City,
Okay.
Washington Heights.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you. I'm always interested in what neighborhood you live in. What is Washington Heights? What is it known for? The
Uh,
neighborhood. Does it have a particular reputation
I would
for?
say in the Broadway community, it's known where Lin-Manuel Miranda lives. And the
Okay.
whole musical In the Heights takes place in
Oh,
the
of
Heights,
course.
in this
So
neighborhood.
you know a lot of Latinos?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and they're your neighbors, right?
100%. Yeah, but it
I
is a pretty diverse neighborhood. Back to even to the, you're going to challenge my history here, but it was a Greek neighborhood for a long time.
yeah.
And Hispanic neighborhood with different cultures therein, and so it's shifted over the different centuries that it's been
Yeah,
around.
well, like a lot of folks, that's when I first discovered the writer of Hamilton, the composer, or the creator of Hamilton, and it was certainly ahead of its time. And then when Hamilton came on, as you know, it really was considered groundbreaking. But he had started with In the Heights, didn't he?
Yes.
So, this isn't a commercial for Facebook or social media, but I find it really interesting the way Facebook, the algorithm works. As I started
Hmm.
interviewing New York-based artists, then people start showing up, people you want to get to know, and there you were, Mike. And
Hey.
and then I looked to see who our mutual friends were. And then I did some more digging and I found out that we have all these connections in common, which is so cool. I'm in Indianapolis in the
Hmm.
middle of the Midwest. And yet you're a Midwest boy too, which resonated with me. And then I checked you out, did my research, and found out that you just had just this great career and you haven't had the usual trajectory. Well, the trajectories that most of us want to go straight up. You've had some great twists and turns, and so I'm delighted that you agreed to share your story with me.
Well, I'm grateful that you asked.
Well, you never know. I usually go through gatekeepers and publicists, and sometimes, they do their job.
Hmm.
So it's great to be able to reach out to you directly. Now, I'm most interested in sharing with our audience that you are, is that a two-time Tony Award winner, correct?
Just one time
Oh, I
for
thought,
now.
okay, merrily we roll along, didn't, okay, the
Yep.
show Emmys, or
Merrily.
Tonys.
Yep. The one Tony was for Merrily. And then, I think I've had 4 nominations for, well, Merrily was nominated, Simon Sidney Brewstein's Windows nominated, and then the most recent ones were Dead Outlaw and Operation Mincemeat from this last season.
So Operation Mincemeat, how's it doing now?
I mean, it's an incredibly tough season on Broadway. This is commercial theater. There were a lot of new musicals that came out in this last season, and I think any season, right? This season
Yeah.
was maybe slightly more than usual, and not many of them are left standing. And that is, unfortunately or fortunately, that is the business. But Operation Mincemeat is still here. It is still running, still going strong, and I mean, if you've seen it or others have seen it, probably not too much of a surprise. It's a fantastic show, history combined with comedy, and World War II is kind of makings of a hit.
And five characters play multiple roles. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. There's five characters, and I believe people are gonna fact check me. I think three of them, including the composer, but three of them are on stage, and two of them are friends. If you saw Jack Malone's Tony win
Yes.
speech, he had a really
Yes.
great comment about, thanking his friends that are also his cast members and the writers that they get, had the wherewithal to write the best song in the show, that clearly won a Tony, but they gave him the song to sing.
Okay. So I have to ask you, and I'm sure a lot of folks want to know how does it feel to have won a Tony Award?
It's been a year on in, and it's still pretty surreal, I would say. It's fantastic. It's, one of the top achievements that a lot of people, wish and hope for and dream about growing up. And to have, found myself in an interesting place to be in this, this business, and to have won a Tony Award, shortly ish thereafter is, really unbelievable. It's,
Well, I'm sure you have tons of pinch me moments, and I want to get into that. But let's go back to where it all started, Minnesota.
oh
And
yeah,
I don't want to mispronounce the name of your hometown, so tell me how do you pronounce it?
it's pronounced Bemidji, and, and it
Bemidji.
is spelled
And
Bemidji.
what is its what is where does it originate from?
So it's an Ojibwe name of a chief that
Oh.
was in that area. So it's the Ojibwe band of Chippewa is one of the tribes that's greatly prevalent in that area, and so that's how the name of the town came
Well,
about.
how cool
Chief
is
Bemidji.
that they kept the indigenous name? The
Absolutely.
town did. Are
There's
they
a lot of
still?
towns around Minnesota that, and to some extent, New York that have indigenous names.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. But is that tribe still around in the
Yep.
state? A
Yep. Absolutely.
reservation?
Yep.
Yeah,
There are.
that's really cool. So, how did you get from Minnesota to New York City and the West End too? I saw
Hmm.
that you are a producer in both
Yes.
countries. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I do know your story, but I want you to talk about your beginnings. So
Yeah. I
tell me
mean,
about growing up in Minnesota.
you you kind of hit the nail on the head when you gave the intro of all the twists and turns that my life and career and passions have taken, over the last, we'll say 30 years or so. I started playing. I was a musician for a good period of my life. So I started playing bass in when I was 12, started, taking lessons, eventually started playing in an orchestra in order to advance my bass skills, and, played in a band, really liked improvising. So that was kind of my school of education was, improvisation, learning music theory, playing jazz, playing blues. But eventually got into, high school and wanted to learn how to sing after playing bass in the show choir. And I'm actually going to take a step back. Probably one of the most fun things I did playing bass was playing bass for a regional production of Jesus Christ Superstar in between eighth and ninth grade, which is a really fun piece to play if anybody's ever played the bass part for that. But I'm going to fast forward back to um, high school. I started singing, and then I started dancing, and I was in the show choir, which is kind of a nice award-winning show choir, and which is really a northern. No, it's a Minnesota, it's a Midwest thing. Indiana's got a bunch of good ones, and we were, on the path to greatness when I was there, and really just loved doing all that. So freeze frame there. Move forward to college. I had no idea what I was going to do in college, but I did know that one thing that I was super interested in was music. So I, you know, had applied for and was accepted into the University of Minnesota. Didn't have a major selected going in. It's way different back then than it is now. I showed up the weekend before school started, and auditioned for the music program. I think I sang one of the 24 Italian arias, if anybody's familiar with that book, Gel Sole del Gange. And I don't even remember the second song. So got in, did a year there at the University of Minnesota, and I'm going to bring everybody on a wild ride. So, take notes, because I don't think I could have back planned this whole, how I got to Broadway from Minnesota. Did that year, came home, was working 3 jobs that summer. I was working as a delivery driver for Papa John's. I was working at Target delivering carts, the cart attendant, I think is what they called it. And then my third job was kind of a whim. I was walking down the street one afternoon and saw a guy that I recognized from high school. We caught up real quick, and I think he was one of the piano players for Jesus Christ Superstar back in several years before, I guess. And he said, "Hey, I'm doing auditions for Oklahoma. Do you want to come in and audition?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, what do I got to do?" He's like, he's like, "You're a music student. Just bring in something that you've been, that you did during your jury." So I bring in to this audition a Handel piece, Where'er You Walk, which, if anybody's familiar with the classical rep, they'll probably understand that. Where'er You Walk from Semele. And I auditioned with that. And this is like it's a regional theater where they mostly pulled people in from like the Guthrie or Minneapolis or different singers. And then they called me back the next day and said, "You get to be Ike Skidmore. That's your role. You got the role." And I'm like, "Ike Skidmore? I don't even know." I was not as familiar with Oklahoma then as I was now. So did Oklahoma, working these 3 jobs. And I get towards, at the end of the run, I think we ran for, 2 weeks, whatever the regional productions do. And I go back to my pizza deliver a pizza towards the end of the summer to the National Guard Armory. And the recruiter, gave me a little tip, and then gave me another verbal tip, which is, "Hey, you ever think about joining the National Guard?" And I, said to myself and to him, "Yes, I have." I had a guy that I was singing in choir with in undergrad. I don't remember. Dick was his name, who was in the National Guard. And he was telling me all about it because he was getting school paid for. He was getting a stipend on top of that. And I was thinking, wow, that sounds pretty good for a boy from Bemidji that's kind of paying for school on his own. And so I come back after my shift is over and talk to this recruiter, gives me the packet, fill out, whatever the administrative data was. And maybe 2 days later, we go to the military entrance processing station in Fargo, North Dakota, and, do all the tests, the underwear Olympics. I can go into that if anybody wants to hear about that. And, you know, uh, get, do my, get really high scores on my ASVAB test. And I asked him after that, the recruiter, I said, "Well, what can I do with like this high 90s ASVAB test?" And he says, "Well, you can be an Arabic translator, or you can go into the infantry." And I said, "Well, my goal at the time was not to completely disrupt my life, but to do this, do basic training and then get back to school, right?" And I was like, "Well, what's the time difference?" He says, "Well, Arabic translator is going to be like a year-long school." And I go, "Oh, okay. What about being the infantry?" He goes, "Well, that's like 16 weeks." And I said, "All right, let's go with that then." And so, you know, enlisted as 11 Bravo, which is infantry out of the Bemidji unit for the Minnesota National Guard. So I knew a lot of the guys in the unit that were, grew up with me, went to high school with me, or just, family, friends, whatnot from around the town. And I go back to the U of M for another year of school and was able to delay basic training until after that. So do that year. And then after that summer, I go to basic training. And basic trainings, whatever it was, 16 months long. I get done in October, and, the fully trained infantryman at that point. And before I had gone, I
Was that college
knew that the
Missouri
school that
City
I wanted to
Lutheran?
go to, after
No, it's
all this was
ELCA, I
said and
believe.
done,
Okay,
was,
all
but there
right.
is, I
College
think
in
there's a
Moorhead
Concordia
to
that's
sing in the
Missouri
Concordia
Senate, but this
Choir.
one's
In
that was
yes,
my
there is in
school.
my hometown of Fort Wayne. There's a
Yep.
Concordia College. There's a Concordia Lutheran High School.
Yeah.
So I grew up around a lot of Lutherans. A lot of my friends are Lutherans, and I'm a Catholic boy,
Hmm.
and you may have heard this too. We grew up to believe from our nuns and the teachers that we should not intermix with Lutherans because we go to hell, because of the founder having, put those his
The
whatever on the door of a church.
90, oh, I don't know the number. I'm a bad Lutheran, I
And
guess.
yet
94
now,
Theses. Yeah.
many of my friends are Lutherans and Catholics who married. So I guess
Uh-oh. That's great.
anyway, so
So I
so
go,
so you grew
yeah.
up Lutheran. So you grew up Lutheran.
Group Lutheran. Yeah. So I go to Concordia College. Great school, private school, and the best, sorry, Westminster Choir College, Concord and some of the other ones. Concordia, the best college in the United States. And I'll
Really?
put the
Yeah.
stake in the ground. And so I go there to sing in that choir. That was like, I want to sing in the best choir. Wasn't super thrilled with the current one. So I get done. October runs around. I start drilling after basic training. And pretty much immediately they tell us you're going to be deployed to Iraq next year. We're giving you orders October 2020, or excuse me, 2005, you're leaving. And we're like, well, damn, I just got done with basic training. I'm going to, I just disrupted school once. I'm going to go to another semester at the place that I want to go and disrupt school again after that. I knew. And so I, made the best of it. I did school for a year, or excuse me, another semester at this new school, and lived with some good friends, and then deployed to Iraq thereafter, and was in Iraq with the 34th Infantry Division. Uh, not that these numbers mean anything for everybody, but the Able Company, 2 to the 136 Combined Arms Battalion. And I was in an infantry unit. Again, all these guys from my hometown. Some of them grew up down the street. There was 3 people in my platoon that our moms lived on the same block. And
Wow.
so it's a really tight knit group of people that just know each other. And so it was the opposite experience of, folks that are just kind of thrown together, and you don't really want to have a choice or any commonalities between each other. So it was that was a blessing, I would say. um so our job overseas, so I was stationed in Camp Taqadum, Iraq, and we ended up being there 16 months in Iraq. So we were supposed to be there for a year, but we were extended for an additional 4 months during what was known as the surge, where they just wanted to have a larger number of US troop presence on the ground. So our job, we really had 3 different ones. One was base security. This was at Camp Tacottum, which was a Marine Corps logistics base, and in steps the Minnesota National Guard to provide security, second area operations, and route clearance. And then we would do essentially named missions periodically. And base security is pretty much what it sounds like. you know there's nothing more to it: entry control points and guard towers. And then the missions that we would run, we'd go out in like a team of like 4 Humvees, so maybe 16 people, and we'd go around, do knock and talks usually, which is a combination of intelligence collecting and hearts and minds building, bringing gifts and soccer balls and clothing and different things to the local population. And that was generally the easy way to say what we did. It
And let
was,
me ask you
yeah,
this about that particular thing. I've always been interested, changing hearts and minds.
yeah.
How effective do you feel you were with that?
I think it's kind of like the golden rule. Um, you treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's how we generally conducted ourselves out out on missions. For example, um, sometimes our daily mission would be go knock and talk and meet up with, we'll say, 5 or 6 different people in this town. And when you go there, we always had to search houses before we would go and feel comfortable being inside a house. And so it was, working with your interpreter, knock on the door. Hey, we're here. We want to talk. Is it all right if we search your place? Asking, not just what our some of our what
Charging
we
it.
understood from some of what our predecessors did, previous groups, and maybe they had a rule that they were supposed to do that. But yeah, we weren't kicking doors in on those regular area operations missions because that would not benefit, that wouldn't have benefited any of us because we had to stay there. They had to stay there. And you want to treat people well.
Now,
Yeah.
Mike, how did interacting with the children affect you? The children in particular, because now you're a dad. Looking
Yeah.
back, what kind of what was that experience like for you?
I mean, I think the kids were cool. They were, you know, they were kids like there were kids anywhere. And, you know, we would bring them, you know, water, soccer balls, you know, interact with them on the street because they would, you know, they come up and say hello and um, you know, they'd probably try to pick up a little bit of English off of us. And um, you know, there was a couple times when, you know, maybe this brings it back into music a little bit. Myself and one of our medics, Brian Ness, we both brought, he had a guitar, I bought an acoustic bass, and so we would once, I think it was like Christmas 2005, no, 6, we brought our instruments out to the town and started playing songs for people. And I remember there was a bunch of kids gathered around to listen, and they probably had no idea what we were singing. But you know, I think the interactions were generally good. I mean, there's always you know, certain, yeah, that's what I'd say. Interactions were very good.
Yeah. Okay, so you were injured in that war. What
I
happened?
was, yeah. So, you know, what I guess I didn't say, you know, amongst all this traversing around uh the area or different, you know, running different missions, is the roads were particularly dangerous. And maybe that's an understatement. If everybody that probably followed the war knows what an IED is, which is an improvised explosive device, and those came in all sorts of different types. It's kind of about, you know, when we were getting there, it's almost the game theory of IEDs. We would find out how to identify them and disarm them. And as we would do that, you know, folks that would place them would find out, or, you know, better ways to place them so that we wouldn't identify them. And so when we got there, the roads were, you know, they have color statuses to signify the level of danger, black being the most dangerous. And most of the roads that we had to drive on were black. And
Oh,
so there was basically, you know, pock marks or large holes or explosions along the sides of all the roads. And we eventually, you know, we worked to help clean that up. But when, you know, I guess foreshadowing, what happened to me is we're running a mission out of Fallujah. We were called to Fallujah to help support our Bravo company. And we get about, I don't know, 15 minutes outside the gate. And I'm in a Bradley fighting vehicle at the time. And there's a Marine Corps EOD team, explosive ordnance uh, device or department team. And they're supposed to be, one, identifying them if they're in the right type of vehicle or equipment, two, disarming any IDs if we identify them. Well, they go past, and then we are shortly thereafter. And next thing I know, you know, lights are out on me, and I come to, and you know, we had hit an IED. It became very clear that's very likely what happened because, you know, how much, well, I don't know. I was shucking around and hitting my head and stuff like that. So, you know, all people that get injured will say there's varying levels of that. And I was pretty fortunate that my injuries were limited to, you know, some pretty minor burns and a concussion. And, you know, so not everybody's that lucky, but yeah, it was pretty, yeah, I don't know what else you'd want to really hear about it, but
Mike, did you suffer PSTD as a result or not?
well, I think a lot of people do. And, you know, that when what I would say is a lot of people have some sort of, you know, post-traumatic stress coming out of
Yes.
different environments. And you know, I wouldn't even limit
Correct.
them to military service, but things that, non-military folks deal with
Mhm.
are can be traumatic as well and have similar symptoms. But yeah, I think, myself and a lot of different folks that I was deployed with have, definitely some stress related to, military service.
Yes. How do you feel when people say thank you for your service? How does that
Well,
make you feel?
yeah, I mean, I feel good. It's acknowledged, and I am not so young or old to not understand what happened during Vietnam. I had a an uncle that was in Vietnam, and so I'm definitely sympathetic to the alternative, which is the not being thanked, or worse yet, being provoked because of your service or spat on. So it feels, you know, good. I'm proud of it, and I'm grateful when people say thank you for your service.
Yes, well, I'm sure everyone listening collectively wants to thank you, including me.
Thanks.
Did you believe in that war?
That's a tough question. I don't know if I have a a great answer for that. What I can say is at least the work that we did was impactful for the population that we were around or serving. For example, we built new schools and brought desks as a part of this. These are infantry people. We had female nurses going out, and we would provide security for the female nurses who would go and provide, medical services for the female population of Iraq. Something that, was la- missing from most of those towns was basic healthcare needs for women. We brought power and supplies to these different towns. These are rural villages that, are, maybe also don't know what's going on at the top of the government. They just know what's going on in their village. So in that small sector, I would say that the work that we did was impactful and helpful.
And on that small little concert that you gave, did
Yeah.
you do any other music while you were there? Use your talents?
Yeah, I mean, we would play on bass pretty frequently for, just the troopies,
Were
just our
there enough
friends.
people in your unit to comprise a band or an orchestra?
You, nah, I don't know if
Or
well,
a
there
band, I
were,
mean, yeah.
but we would have had to buy a lot. There was,
Yeah,
I think about 100 of us, but I think there was three of us that probably had instruments,
yeah.
myself and two other guitar players.
Yeah. So I mean, up to that point, it sounded like you believed in carpe diem and seizing the moment or seizing the opportunity. So, and I looked at your
Yeah.
bio, and it's very clear that that's the kind of guy you've been. Would you say that's correct?
uh, yeah, definitely. And maybe some would say that's impulsive, but I like your take on it of seize the day. It's, you got to take the best next step sometimes and seize the opportunity.
You know, there was one moment in your bio that really stuck with me because I
Hmm.
went through something similar, not the same, where I could not find a job. I could
Hmm.
not for the life of me. And you ended up taking a job, I can't remember, and you made very little money, but you did
Hmm.
it because you had to. And
Yeah.
it sounded to me like, here's a guy who doesn't have an ego, that kind of ego. Well, I'm too good for that. I'll never do that.
Hmm.
You did what you had to, and I really, I really identified with that. But would you say that where did that attitude come from? Your parents? Were your parents influential in that?
Yeah, I would say that my parents are influential in that. I grew up from, fairly humble and modest, beginnings growing with my parents. And so,
What
we
did your father, mother, what did they do for a living?
so my mother was a medical transcriptionist, and she just actually retired. But my father had a couple jobs. Primarily, he was the maintenance guy at the hospital, but he was also a volunteer firefighter. So he did that for 20 years. Eventually, was the volunteer chief, and after he kind of got rid of those, he was a carpenter too. So he
Well,
did.
that's where you got your work ethic, right? Your
Yeah.
parents were hard workers.
Yes. Oh,
That's
yes.
great. And did you work from the time you were like in high school and so on and so forth?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first job I probably had was, yeah, at picking rock on uncle's farm. And that
Really?
is, oh, that is, that is rigorous work.
Did you grow up doing those kinds of things like a lot of people from younger generations? Not to diss the current generation, but it appears they don't have that same work ethic as like you do the dirty jobs when you're young, knowing that, it helps you to it drives you to make a pledge to yourself. I'm never going to do this when I grow old. I'm going to like not have to do all this heavy work. I'm going to work really hard so I can make a decent living. Did you do that?
I don't know what it was driven. It was partially that, but partially I wanted a little bit of money so I could buy some
Well, I was
things.
going to
And
mention that,
I
and
think
yeah, that was part
the
of
yeah, one
it.
of the biggest things, I think the biggest first purchase I probably made was like this 600-watt Carvin bass amp that was
Wow.
it was like
Well,
900 bucks or something like that. But that I worked these couple jobs and saved up for that because I was playing in a band and I needed a kick-ass
were
amp
you
to.
were you in a garage band?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I
what was it called?
There was one called Sergeant Parkinson's Platoon, coincidentally. Yeah, that's more irony or just the coincidence. But the
Who is
guitar
that?
the guitar. So in middle school, you could take an elective course once a year, and one of the options was called Sergeant Parkinson's Platoon, and it was this the seventh grade music teacher who's actually a bassoonist by that was his I learned later on, but he would teach guitar. And so it was an homage to him. He was actually a Vietnam vet and would teach guitar and different things for these middle school kids that were probably really unappreciative, but it was great class. And we thought, what a great band name, especially for some local cachet.
So what was your what kind of music did you play? Were
It
you a cover
was,
band?
we did both. It was covers and originals, but it was like, punk, ska, that kind of era.
Cool. Did you wear piercings and tattoos and
I mean, I had, I don't, I have both ears pierced, but I don't really wear them very much anymore. I can
yeah,
if my
yeah.
daughter has something real cool I want to throw in, but
I thought they grow in. Well, mine did anyway. So yeah. So what happened after the military?
yeah, after the military, after, I get home late July 2007 from Iraq, and school's starting end of August. So I was like still in mental, party mode, breaking free from being deployed for 16 months, living a life of danger to complete freedom, and walking down the grocery aisles wondering what I'm going to eat, because now I have to make a choice rather than just going to the DFAC line. And so I'm like right back into school, and I remember it being pretty pretty crazy seeing the kids weren't that much younger than me, but from a life experience standpoint, it was like
Uh,
night and day from when I left and came back. The level of um I don't know the best word to say, but like the level of respect that I felt the other students were giving the teachers. And I was
you
just
had
there to like,
matured. You had matured substantially.
yeah, I was there to buckle down, learn, and get awesome grades. And that's what I did. But so I go back to school. I don't know if I've mentioned this story. I go back because I wanted to go into the Concordia choir, which I already mentioned.
Yeah. By the way,
Uh,
I want to mention to
yeah.
our audience that I had a recent guest, David Murray, who is with the
Mm-hmm.
Empire City Gay Men's Chorus. You two don't know each other, but we spent a good amount of time talking about our love for choral music,
I
and
heard that.
we both met in a choir. So you said make sure that
Yeah.
I'd like to tell you about my choral experience. So
Yeah,
here you
yeah.
go.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I have varied choral experience, but I want to go back, get in this. And I remember thinking, when I got extended from, we were supposed to come home, like I mentioned, in like March of 2007. I was like, all right, I'll be at home in time for the Concordia Choir audition. And then we got extended, and I think, aside from my parents, which somehow the news of the extension was leaked, so the parents actually knew before we did. But aside from telling them first that we got extended, I wrote to Renee Clausen via email, and I was like, hey, I'm in Iraq, and I really wanted to be back for the Concordia Choir audition, but I'm kind of stuck here for another whatever months. Um, is there anything I can do? And he's basically like, really, thanks for your service, but this is when the auditions are, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's fast forward. I get home, and I'm back in school that fall, taking, you know, amongst other things, what was it? Like counterpoint class. I had already done all the music theory and history, choral conducting. And so Dr. Clausen was doing choral conducting. And there was maybe 8 of us in the class. And who were the guinea pigs, but the class? So, somebody would go up, start conducting, and the class would have to sing to whatever music it was. And it was, I don't know, an 8 a.m. class. And we get done with, I don't know, some piece. And at the end of it, I think I bombed like a low C or something like that. And Dr. Clausen's head kind of whips up, and end of class, he comes over to me and he says, how would you like to be in the Concordia Choir? And I was like,
Wow.
oh, what? Like, kind of unheard of, because it was mid semester. It was like the end of the semester. So I joined
Yeah.
halfway through that year, not having had to go through the formal audition process, which is like public and open and pretty nerve wracking, even for a guy that's been, shot at and blown up. But anyway, so I was like ecstatic over this, right? And so I joined the Concordia Choir. Where did we go on tour that year? I think it was just the South, right?
Are you a baritone?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, well, I can tell from your voice. You're speaking, you have great pipes.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
was,
So what was it like?
yeah, it was awesome. It was a level of excellence unlike I've ever experienced in
What
any
kind of
other choirs.
repertoire did you guys have?
I mean, it was mostly classic. I mean, it's hard to
A
say.
lot
It
of,
was choral music.
did you do a lot of art music?
Let's see. Usually we'd have like a number of sets for a concert, and one of the sets was probably like traditional hymns, but very likely Dr. Clausen would have made an arrangement of it, and so it was something really well done. Music set to like E. E. Cummings poems.
Yes.
Other, we would do some Bach every now and again. So we'd do some varied stuff. The second year we did a whole Hawaiian set. We had one gal in the choir from Hawaii. So we did a song, and that's a whole nother story I'll tell you about, I guess, in just a second. Maybe it's a good aside. So we did different sorts of sets,
Did you do
depending on,
Broadway in Great
you know,
American Songbook?
we didn't. That is probably
Really?
the one thing that we didn't do. I think
Interesting.
I think Dr. Clausen was, maybe he wasn't a huge fan of
Right.
Broadway,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think his daughter was a big fan of Broadway. I remember him gloating about her being a triple threat.
Well, let me ask you this. Over your lifetime, were you a fan? We'll get to that later,
Yeah,
of course. Look what happened. But did you on your own listen to pop standards, and Broadway?
I would say yes. So go back to being like, I don't know. Do you remember the 3D puzzles? They're still
Yeah.
around there, but they were
Uh,
they were kind of a hit for a while. We had what's that giant German castle? The big
um,
famous one with the beautiful paintings. I should know. But my friend and I, Danny, we had that puzzle, and I remember distinctly sitting in his basement putting this puzzle together day after day after day with probably Phantom of the Opera on repeat.
I love that.
So yeah, I remember being introduced to different musical theater pieces at a fairly early age, but
Well,
more
you were in
into
Oklahoma. You
rock.
were in Oklahoma, so that
Yeah,
tells me a lot.
yeah.
What did you play, by the way,
uh,
in
it,
Oklahoma?
Ike Skidmore. So he's
Okay.
like what would you call him? A supporting character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me again what was his role? What did he do in the show?
He
Can't
had a
remember.
few. He has like I mean, big, right? He has like the farmer and the cowman
Uh, yeah, chorus.
solo. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Aunt
So,
M's perceived love interest towards the end.
so choral music, how many concerts did you do with the group?
I mean, we would go.
Approximately over time.
Uh, I mean, probably close to 100, maybe. I don't know. We would
Wow.
go on tour and be on tour for a couple weeks and sing, 2 or 3 weeks and just sing every night, pretty much.
Wow. Were you, I may be wrong about, I may have the wrong state, but were you like big competitors with St.
Olaf.
Olaf's?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with that group. Anyway, being from the Midwest, you know, try to keep track of what's going on regionally or in the Midwest in general, my beat, if you will.
Yep.
So, okay, so then after college,
After college, I had met my wife there, so we got married right after college.
you get met her in music, and she's a
Met her in music
musician,
school.
right?
Yeah, in
Tell me
counterpoint
about her.
class.
I'd love to know more about her. I saw in your bio that you guys went on
Yeah,
to New York together.
we
So tell me
did. Yeah,
about
I mean
her.
that's real. I mean, I'm going to answer your story very shortly, which was how did you end up from Minnesota to New York? And it was really that was the impetus was,
Yeah.
we got done with school, got married, had our kids, and we're like, we need to move to New York now or never, basically. And there's some other things that happened in between then and there, but that was kind of the impetus. And so we're like, okay, let's just do it. We had a house that we had a contractor build in Minnesota, and we basically just put everything up and said, let's move to New York. Julia auditioned for and got into Manhattan School of Music for classical voice performance for a master's degree. And I still, I say this flippantly, I guess I had some GI Bill left to spend and had a friend that was always talking about the SIPA, so the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. And I was like, let me look into that. So
Oh,
looked into that and got into that program at Columbia when we moved out here because I had some extra GI Bill to spend, which was a really good move. Um, but yeah, but after college, you alluded to it earlier, which was slim pickings for jobs. It was 2009, Midwest, kind of slightly post financial crisis, but there just was not a big job proliferation. And this guy, meaning me, I had, military service and I had a undergraduate degree. I was really thinking in my head, I'm a hireable person. And from a reasonable perspective, I think most people probably would, but I couldn't get a job with an armored truck company. I couldn't get a job like running security places. Like I was just throwing out applications everywhere. And I was like, what do I do? Damn, And so the way I actually got a job, and perhaps this is a lesson for everybody, and was I just reached out to my network and told them what was
yeah.
going on. And the first person I called my old company commander, and
There you go.
I was like Adam, because he was also a Concordia College alumni. And so we've stayed in touch. I was like, Adam, I can't, I'm done with school. And I just like, do you have any references or somewhere that I could work? He's like, yeah, a good friend of mine works at the Radisson, which is a hotel brand, and he might have something for you. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And at the same time, this guy that was dating a friend of mine, his uncle owned a bar, and I was like, Dan, what about your uncle's? Is he looking for work? And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll go over there. So I got these two interviews, and I was probably like showed up like the most well-dressed guy ever coming in for an interview at a bar to be basically the cook. And yeah, that's what I remember, that they were pretty much like, when do you want to start? And I'm like, why did I get dressed up if that's all we're going to ask? And so I was a cook at a bar to start, and I was a host at the Radisson restaurant, which if you know how any of those businesses operate, the hours were um, in conflict with somebody who wanted to get any amount of sleep. So I remember working until super late, closing down the bar, and and that's like 2 a.m. or so in Minnesota, and then Sunday morning having to be up to open this hotel restaurant as the host. So that's, have to be there at like 5:30 or something like that. So it's just a terrible several months of doing those things. It was kind of good to be young and not really have many obligations. So in that aspect, it was pretty simple life.
Yeah, you
Um,
know what occurs to me as you're talking, once again, I identify so much with this because, I had a similar path over time in
mhm,
different parts of my life, but transferable skills.
mhm.
Your bio clearly reflects all the different things that you've done over your lifetime. You take it sounds like you took skills from each one and they
Yeah,
made you the person you are today as a
yeah,
professional. Would you say that's true?
yeah, absolutely. You have to, hopefully take the good from where you are and where you've been
I
and
bet
leave
you learned
leave
a
the
thing or
bad.
two as a host of a restaurant. That's a tough job.
Yeah, yeah, it was so sleepy. So I really learned how to do crossword puzzles very well. It was like the 6 a.m. shift. So very rarely would we take a reservation, maybe once or twice
Oh,
during the
okay.
time I was there.
Well, actually, I was
Yeah.
talking about customer service and how if you've got those skills that can serve you well
Yeah.
throughout your whole career, interacting with
I
everybody.
I mean, I think those, working at Target and a few other places has in the more formative years stretched those customer service skills and really brought those to the forefront. But I mean, that is something I would recommend anybody have in their lifetime is the opportunity to be in a customer service position. It's an incredible education in how to listen to people, understand their needs, get the feedback, and do some conflict resolution along the way, um, and serve other people. I know there's probably a lot of people that don't think that that's a valuable method to do that. Maybe I'm just judging that, but I would recommend it for folks. Maybe not. It's not. It is a career for some people. It wasn't a career for me to do that, but
Sure. Well, it led you to Oprah likes to say, everything that
yeah,
happened to me in my lifetime, good and bad, has led me to this moment. I
it's
truly
true.
believe in that.
Yeah,
So you and your wife pack your
yeah,
tap shoes and you head for New York City.
yes.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's like the quintessential dream of a lot of people from
it
music
is.
background or any
It
theater
is.
or performing arts. That's the pinnacle.
Yeah,
And you
and
did it.
we did it. I think that what I would tell people who are, I mean, making any life decision is what I my friends used to say to each other as we would jump off bridges into rivers in Minnesota, which is there ain't nothing to it but to do it. And I know that seems overly simplified, but sometimes you have to not as much worry about the outcome and just think about, getting it done and going and doing it.
Well,
And
the military had to have taught you to be fearless, right?
yes,
To
yeah,
survive, you had to be fearless, right?
you did. You had to not worry about what was happening the next day
Do
and
what's in front of you, right?
deal with what's in front of you now. And sometimes that's very micro and like, what's the next physical step that I'm going to take today? Just keep moving
Right.
your 2 feet, one in front of the other, and keep on, keeping on with that.
So, boy, you both went to two very prestigious places, right?
Yeah.
And so, did you from that moment like remain completely again? I noticed there are
Yeah.
patterns that run through your story which
Mm-hmm.
I identify with, and that's being intentional.
Yeah.
You did everything intentionally, did you not?
Yeah. I
Did you
think
know then that you were going to end up doing professional theater as a producer and all the things that you do now?
absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah. It seems planned out in retrospect, but it was I had done a lot of music and a lot of performing and even producing of concerts and such for, back to when I was in a band. Those bands don't play in a venue by themselves just because someone asks them to. So you have to produce those shows, you have to promote them yourself, you have to get the band organized, which are all the artistic people, which is probably the most difficult part of any of these things, together to actually want to do this also. Um, and so I get to this point in my career where we left Minnesota. I had just my wife and I got to sing the Marriage of Figaro together. So I was Figaro and she was Susanna. It was great. And so this is an opera for folks that don't know. And then we moved to New York, and I have, for the most part, put down performing for myself, not purposely, mainly because of time constraints and wanting to build, a career and take care of family and all those sorts of obligations. So it's really been about building my career when I got out here, starting with, going to Columbia, and then traveling for quite a while, both with the Presidential Management Fellow Program and then with work. I was working for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for a little while, and then Ernst and Young, and then to the career that I'm in now. But throughout I don't know, that chapter of my life, so to speak, it wasn't performing had definitely taken the back burner. The arts had taken the back burner. It was more about me supporting my this part of my career, and then also trying to help support my wife in her career as well. And so she's done performing, she's done all that kind of stuff. And having two performers, as you'd imagine, in one family is can be difficult. And also, she's much more of a perfectionist than I am. If you haven't figured out from my story up to this point of jumping off bridges and carelessly doing things, but um, uh, so I get if your question kind of I think is alluding to how did I even get from again not only from Minnesota to New York, but then New York to producing. It was an impetus of looking for honestly another investment vehicle, um which is a lot of Broadway investors or producers will probably be like, whoa, you should go somewhere safer. But once you've found the safe places for investments, and you want to do something other than just see, for example, like your 401k sitting there, how do you then turn, we'll say a little bit of excess savings or income into something that's enjoyable. And I've never been, I guess, somebody that's terribly enjoyed too much material possessions. I know plenty of people out there with crazy watches, and everybody's got their little collection thing that they like and hobbies. And so it was time to pick up both an interesting, I guess, investment and pick back up my hobby.
I
And
think it's important to mention, though, that that interest in high finance, if you will, came from your Columbia education experience, correct? Because you
yeah,
interacted with financial institutions, right? Banks and so on and
yeah,
so forth.
yeah. I mean, at Columbia, well, Columbia kind of got, like you've said before, everything that I've done up to this point has got me to where I am today, and Columbia is no exception. Um, my
Plus that you
concentration
got a
there,
network there too, like you did back in
yeah,
the day with your
absolutely,
military connections.
exactly. It was a huge network. My concentration was international economic policy, and so that kind of that definitely comes into play when I'm thinking about Broadway and West End producing or investing. That background of international economic policy. But thinking about passions, I had looked into different kinds of investing and remembered seeing somebody out there. I hope can call me to take me to task on this. It was either a Bloomberg article but I think it was a CBS Sunday Morning special. My brain is a little foggy on it, that interviewed a couple producers.
Yeah, it'd probably be CBS Sunday Morning.
Yeah,
I am a loyal. I've been watching for years. It's my
yeah,
favorite. They do the best TV
they
in my
do.
Yeah.
I agree. So they did this whole
And they've been
special.
great for Broadway. I mean, come on. I mean, their profiles are in depth. I mean, you really, really get a sense of the business, right?
You do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was this art this special, I guess, on Broadway investing and producing. And I was like, whoa, that's that first of all, that's what that is. That's what Broadway producing is. Some people still ask me, which I love here talking about, is what is Broadway producing? What do you do?
Mhm.
And then secondly, that's an investment vehicle. So, that kind of clicked in my mind when I was sussing out different, I guess things to invest more time and energy into. And so I just started doing my own research on like, how do I get into this world? And so this is pre-pandemic. I started just reaching out to different, well, how do you do it? You Google it, right? If you don't know somebody, just Google it. So I Googled it and tried to find some people that did know something about this world and found a couple producers that had been doing this for a little bit and just said, hey, can we have a conversation?
Well, I bet you had a lot of Columbia connections and a lot of wealthy investors who were right there in that circle, huh?
I mean, there definitely can be the program. It, I would say some of the schools likely have that. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, we do live in New York, so it's
Correct.
it
Of
is quite the
course.
center of
Yeah,
wealth
you're
here. But you do have producers from all over the U.S. It
sure.
seems like it would be really New York centric, but they're all over the U.S., all over the world.
Right. Well, that's who all for people who aren't, yeah, and that's why you're on the show, by the way, because I think what you guys do, there wouldn't be a Broadway if it weren't for investors and people like yourself who have that vision, who can, and especially people like you with the music background, it just like is logical,
Yeah.
that you're gonna be really measured when you make a decision about number one, the property or the vehicle because of your
Mm-hmm.
music background, and you've been exposed to the theater by way of music, and so you know
Mm-hmm.
good performance when you see it, you know a good script when you see it, correct?
Yes. Yes. I mean,
And that's so important. It's just not the money thing. You have to know that the artistic product is
true.
if it's gonna make it in New York, it better be good because it
Yeah.
faces critics and people like me. I'm a
Yeah.
critic, and so
People.
anyway, yeah, that's why I think your stories. I like you said, I listened to Debbie Allen on
Hmm.
CBS recently on that show, and there's so much change going on socially. More and more minorities are
Hmm.
becoming Broadway producers, and it's
Hmm.
literally changing societal attitudes. Talk about
Hmm.
changing hearts and minds. What you guys do is very important work, I think. The
Yeah.
voices that you're putting on the stage.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, people ask all the time, and you alluded to this just a couple seconds ago, which is how do you choose a piece? And I'm there's I would say we'll bifurcate that into how do you choose a piece that you want to lead produce, and how do you choose a piece that you want to get involved with as, we'll say, a co-producer? And I mean, they should be kind of synonymous. It just depends who's the early bird that got the worm in those scenarios. But
Hmm.
we'll say from a co-producing standpoint, you know there's a lot of wonderful um pieces that come to market. But if it's a musical, like you said, what's first? Do I like the music? And if not, then the dollars and cents are arbitrary for me. They're just, the budget, the business plan doesn't matter. If I'm not a fan of the art, then it's maybe not something that I would get involved with. And that doesn't mean it won't be completely successful. I want all the pieces to be incredibly and wildly commercially successful. But
I've seen your track record, and it's just kind of interesting because all of the shows that you've been involved with, I'm a huge fan of Evita. I'm a huge
yeah,
fan of Chess. I'm a
yes.
huge fan of Merrily We Roll. I mean, I think your taste is impeccable, if I
Well,
may.
thank
If
you.
I may
Yours too.
gush.
Have you
No,
seen
really.
Heather's?
You've had some great, oh, Heather's, that too. I've been a critique in the Midwest for
Yeah.
about 45 years, so I'm at a point
Mm-hmm.
in my career I've seen everything at least 3 or 4 times,
Mm-hmm.
professional, regional, educational, community, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you, you've got some credits. Those shows are timeless, many of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
There
you made some
it's
good decisions, I think, right?
yeah, I mean, you do your best. Um,
Yeah.
they don't always they don't always work out super well, but
Do you also, well, you mentioned the music and all. How about the script? How important is that to you?
yeah, I mean, so let's talk about script. If we're script, um, most of the time those are we'll say it's a revival. It's going to be pretty locked in. So we don't,
Sure.
we kind of it's a known quantity for the most part with a revival. It's been tried and tested. It's probably been through a million revisions. Merrily did have some script updates, I believe,
Yeah,
some
I
book
just
updates
looked
when it
at, I
did.
went back to Wikipedia
Yeah.
to do my research, and I saw that, yeah, what we're seeing, what was just currently playing,
Hmm.
it was like 2 or 3 revisions, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And
Yeah.
Evita had some, but let's talk about new works.
Yes.
I I am a fan of the old adage that, great plays and great musicals aren't written, but they're rewritten. And so if the storyline is if it, especially if it's like a brand new out of the box, it's only been through a couple rewrites, if it's a good storyline and the music is gonna carry it, then I'm a big believer that, you can continue that hard work ethic and building the book to be something magnificent as well. So that's book is hard work and dedication and getting it through some real iterations. We'll take, for example, I know you talked with my co-lead producer and the writer of Figaro, an original musical that we put up in
I
London
was
at
going
the
to bring up
Palladium.
Will. Yeah. Is he directing the West End
So
productions?
he directed the Palladium production, yes. So he was there directing that. And so what I would say is when I heard that music for the first time, talking about, the algorithm getting us together, I
Yeah.
mentioned that I had sung the role Figaro, and Facebook was like slamming me every day with this Figaro, a new musical. And I'm like, what is this? I got to reach out to them.
That's
I got to
so
see where
interesting.
they're at. And so I reach out to them. Will answers. We have this awesome phone call. We hit it off. And I'm like, dude, how can I help you? I just want to
Oh,
help you.
oh.
And at that point, it was just like, let's talk about your vision. Let's talk about where you want to go. And he had sent me the beautiful music, the demos from Ashley Jana, who's this wonderful composer. She's a genius, actually. He sends these, and they're like these fully mastered and engineered demos, which is unusual. And I'm like, this is just something unlike other music that I'm hearing. And I just want to help you because this is something I think that whether it's me or somebody else, the world needs to hear this.
That's great.
And so, I just kind of help them out for a while. And eventually they're like, hey, do you want to be the lead producer? And I was like, whoa, all right. I
Wow.
had thought about it, and some other mentors that I trust around this had asked me, "Hey, have you thought about being the lead producer of this work?" And I was like, "No, I guess I hadn't at the time." So anyway, now we're fast forwarding, a couple of years, and here we are. We did the talking about vision. Well, I'm kind of rambling, but we go back to the book.
No.
We did the Palladium, and in front of you know, capacity crowds at the Palladium for 2 nights, and we get a real sense of what 4,000 plus people feel like as that third member of this group, which is the audience. How is the audience going to react? They're a member of the cast also, I think, or they're a member of every production. Because if you're not doing it for them, who are you doing it for? So we got incredibly valuable
How are the
feedback.
reviews?
They were
How are the
good. We
reviews?
had some
Great.
great reviews. It's like anything. You have some
How is
great
the box
reviews
office?
and it was good. Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, for 2 nights,
For
I
people who
really,
don't know who Will Nunziata, I need to back up
yeah.
because I want people to know that Will is, well, he's more than up and coming. I think it's not going to be long before he breaks through. Yeah, but Will is a singer, actor, dancer, playwright. He does it all. Filmmaker.
Filmmaker, yeah.
And his brother Anthony, the two of them came to me by way of Facebook too. So I've interviewed both of them. Anthony has performed at Indy. Will, of course, I got to know Will through his twin brother.
Hmm.
So in remarkable talents. And so he obviously you were referring to him. I mean, he was on this podcast, and I
Hmm.
had sent it to you so that
Yeah.
I could establish some credibility that I knew your story, or what I knew about Figaro at least. And but I had asked you previously, will he be directing the West End? You're doing in the West End, is that right? The
So the
end
next
of
step,
this. Go ahead.
for us, that was a nice tee up, is October. We're doing a workshop in London. So a
Okay.
workshop and industry presentation, which
Okay.
is really, from a producing perspective, lots of great reasons to do this. We're making some really awesome revisions to the book. Like I said, scripts aren't written, great ones aren't written, they're rewritten. It was good. It was good. It was really good. It had been through, I think, almost 4 years of writing and revisions when we hit the Palladium, but now we're doing more revisions.
After the Palladium, do you guys do? I often wondered when you workshop something, do you do a debriefing? You go page by page, where they really laughed at this, and this kind of fell short, and I don't
Yeah,
think they got that. Do
it's
you literally
both.
do that?
It's both.
Yeah.
We took collective feedback after the Palladium, not only from, the tight creative team, but also our co-producers and investors. We reach out to them and
Ah,
say, you were there, you've
what
read this
worked, what
thing.
didn't? Yeah.
Yeah, what worked and what didn't? What are you feeling? And what did you hear the audience react to? And so we're, a team of, we the producers we treat like family. They're a member of the team, all the co-producers, all the investors. We want their feedback. And so we collect all that, we aggregate it, and we kind of synthesize it, find the common threads. And you also look at, you can't treat every um review as gospel, but you can look for commonalities and, like, what is true, what is opinion, and find the great stuff out of that. And so there's, at this stage, it was appropriate to do so, and we have time and the desire to make this the best book that it can be. And without giving too much away, it's about as much as I can say in terms of script updates. But we are making new updates. There's new songs being written. um that's what I can tip my hat to. We're doing this workshop, and this is like, in New York, it's like having these readings that you hear about.
Sure.
There's a number of reasons to do these workshops. One is we're going to see what it's like in front of, with a new cast members that are coming in and performing all these, and we'll make maybe some new tweaks and whatnot and see how it gets off the ground. But also we'll have, theater owners, we'll have other West End investors, we'll have our co-producers, we'll have other people come into this event in a small, nonchalant venue to see it, performed again.
Yeah.
And that's a super valuable experience as well, to get.
Do you do any kind of educational stuff or informally or otherwise, like, how to become a Broadway producer? Do you like get invited to speak to
So,
groups? Any of that ever happen?
yeah, sometimes I got to speak to a group. It was actually an international, what was it, commercial producing class, I think is what it was.
Cool.
But they did all sorts of different types of art and producing, and so most of them were out of London, but I got to speak with them
Hmm.
in January. But I'm always happy
Hmm.
to chat about uh producing, because I feel
Well,
like
I
that's what I do most of the time, is talking about the process and the different ways. And it's all
well,
bespoke knowledge.
I'm looking at the time now, and you've been really generous with your time, but uh, I'm gonna close this off by saying, though, that I really admire the paths that you've taken to get to where you are and should be commended for sure.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck with Figaro. And
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you, have you got two, three things going at the same time? Are you constantly keeping things in the pipeline? How do you operate?
Yeah, I mean, I always have a pipeline probably operating. And
Mm-hmm.
ideally, they just keep building up and never closing down, which I guess I'm in the fortunate position right now where I do have a number of shows running with both Evita in London, Fiddler on the Roof on its tour of the UK and Ireland. In the US, I have Heather's, I have Operation Mincemeat, and then also a really wonderful, wonderful, darling piece that everybody should see when it comes to them, which is Here There Are Blueberries, which has
Yeah,
done numerous tours around the US. It's probably coming somewhere near you. It's
I wish I
yeah,
had time for you to describe blueberries, but there's plenty of material online if they
yeah,
want to Google it, right?
definitely.
But it's a docudrama of some
It
sort, correct?
exactly.
Musical,
It is
and
a
it's based on pictures in an
yeah,
album.
yeah, the
Belong
short
to
version.
Nazis or Germans or
It is
whatever.
yeah, it is a docudrama of an album that was received by the US Holocaust Memorial in DC, or the museum rather, in DC. I can't remember what year it was, but they see these photos and it is of the the Nazi guards having a good time and being on vacation, and so they go through this whole process of, is this something worth displaying, number one, and two, what is the significance of it? And they go through this, and the audience, when I saw it, well, I've seen it a couple of times, you're hanging on every word that is said because every word is very important and deliberate. And it's, it's gone, they just did a licensed production in Spain, so it was in Spanish for the first time. It's going to be all, it's, yeah, just watch out, folks. It's a great show.
Well, thank you so much for giving me your time. And,
Thank
I
you.
try to make it to New York once a year, and hopefully I'll see some of these projects that you're working on when I'm there. But, it's a pleasure getting to know you.
Likewise. Yeah,
And let's stay in touch.
please do.
And we need to do another whole show about, but this is a really good primer for our listeners. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing your story.
Anytime.
Mike.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.